Tonight, we're meeting here at the Swine Scoop website. Do remember this website. We plan to do a number of seminars kind of per year, and also if at the end there's going to be some time for some questions. If there's any topic that you would like us to cover or suggest, also put that in some of the comments or questions that are on the place where you can ask some questions. Tonight we're going to talk about the impact of sorting accuracy on pork production and how to estimate it. There's a number of people that were involved in this. Myself, Francisco, Cabezon, Yichen Q, Mark Cheng, Nathan Thompson, and then we're having an extension side. There's a extension kind of survey that you can take on a link that's being done by Emma Allen and Joanna Claudy that are taking an extension approach. What other information needs to be done in this area of marketing and modeling. Well, my overview tonight is going to be review the optimal market weight for an individual pig, what kind of determines that optimal market weight. Review of marketing cuts and carcass weight distribution. Review of statistics that we've found that could be related to the accuracy of sorting. Some of our initial evaluation of what's the level of sorting accuracy that's going on in the United States, just from 3 producers. Some of our observations, we then started to look at the interaction of the sorting accuracy with the mean body weight on sort loss and how they interact, and the impact of sorting accuracy on the optimal market weight, and then to summarize in our conclusions. Now, about 2007 and 2008, Brian Rickard and I did kind of an exercise because we saw that with distillers there's going to be highly fluctuating feed prices with possibly little change in the market price. So we had data from a lean genetics lines, and then we modeled some other genetic lines. But we used very low corn prices, $2.50, $190 a ton soybean meal, and then just kept increasing the price of corn and soybean meal and increasing the price of the feed, but kept the price of the pigs, 42 cents per pound live weight, I think $56 per cent of carcass weight the same. And we did it separately for barrows and gilts. And we had data on high lean gain pigs, and 2 other genetic populations were modeled, but we modeled the same body weight gain, but we modeled decreased protein deposition, increased fat deposition, differences in the rates of lean growth and fat growth, and then we could predict the relative feed intakes based on the energy cost of protein and lipid accretion for each genetic population and sex. But just to give you an idea, this is the feed efficiency, and at the end, which is about 310 pounds there, we're about at a 3.2, a 3.55, and about a 3.9 feed efficiency. But there's a pretty consistent difference in feed efficiency at all body weights. And this is data from 207. Modern genetic lines would even be a little more feed efficient than the line there. We modeled the relationship of back fat for these different genetic populations, and fatter the line, greater the rate that back fat increases for each additional day or for each additional pound of live weight gain. We modeled the differences in percent lean, smaller at the beginning and increasingly greater as the pigs grow heavier. And then we looked at what was their optimal market weight. We quickly found that if feed costs were low, all genetic populations would almost go to the top of the pork processor's marketing grid. But as feed costs increase, the very fattest genetics line would drop first, then the intermediate line, and then the very leanest line could go to a heavier and heavier weight before it would decrease its optimal market weight away from the top of the pork processor's marketing grid. Now, it has to do with the fact that it's marginal turn equals marginal cost, and if the feed efficiency times the cost of feed per day plus some daily cost for the building, 9, 10, 11 cents a day, leasing fee plus some other costs, is paying for that extra day, you'll keep feeding the animals. But when the feed efficiency is poorer, because the line is relatively fatter and you drop in percent lean, given the same prices, the fatter genetics are going to decrease their optimal market weight first, then the intermediates, and then finally the leanest lines. Then we also have to have a little review that if we take the variation in body weight at any age, there tends to be a normal distribution. Now, in a lot of our simulation work that we did, we assumed that 25% of the pigs would be killed one day, and then 10 days later, the next 25%, and then 14 days later, the third cut or bottom 50%. Now notice that the overall distribution of pigs is a normal distribution. Now, the more health challenges you have, you'll start deviating from a normal distribution, and you'll start to have more poor doing pigs, and you'll be skewed with more lighter body weight pigs. And then you'll start deviating from normal. Now, your first cut would look like this, that you have a growth curve, and that black line is the general curve, and you reach the time of the first cut, and you would take pigs of the first cut. Now, the first cut is not going to be a normal distribution, it's going to be the farmost tail. You're going to have a few very heavy pigs, and then you're going to have increasing numbers of pigs that are a little bit closer to the mean. Then this is going to be what the second cut's going to look like. 10 days later, the mean goes up. The upper part of the pigs here are gone, and those are the pigs. And this isn't perfect here, but it would be this slice right here from the mean to the 25th percentile. And then your third cut will look like this even later on, and it's the lowest 50%. Now, I know that some people model that pigs going to a pork processing plant should be normally distributed, and every cut's normally distributed, and that's not quite right. This is what the three cuts should kind of look like. And then if you look at this, this is the first cut right here in the blue. Now, if you're making more profit going close to the edge of the packer's grid, and I made the edge right here, and this is where the discounts start, the fact that you're making more profit on these pigs will push more pigs here where you'll accept the discount. Then the second cut will be here, and it will be a narrower band, and it will be a taller. And then the bottom 50% will be approximately when the heaviest remaining pigs hit the top of the producer's grid, and you have the entire 50%, and you have this same tail as you had here if it's a normal. Now, if you do this, and the pigs were absolutely marketed based upon a measurement of body weight, the height of these pigs would be twice this point here, or it would be up here some ways. The number of pigs here would be twice this point, would be about here, and then you'd have a few tail end pigs here and a few tail end pigs here. These would be the fastest growing pigs, and the fact that you're making more money on these pigs will push these pigs into the discount range. And it's very difficult to not sell some pigs with a heavy discount in the first cut, because this tail continues out some ways, 3, 4 standard deviations above the mean. Now that gives you an idea what the distribution of pigs would look like if the pigs were marketed very accurately. Now, to look at the impact of sorting errors, so we developed a stochastic model using actual body weight and daily feed intake curves from a PIC trial. The model was developed that reproduced all the variation in body weight growth, back fat and loin depth, and dressing percentage. And we used the standard deviation of dressing percentage, which is 2%. That's probably on the high side. Some pork processors are less than that. We grew on the computer, or modeled, 25 4,000 head barns with both sexes with a 1-week age spread, as if the barn was filled with 1 week's worth of pigs coming from a larger production facility. Now, we had 4 body weight estimation errors. I could find very little in the literature. Some goes back to Professor Bill Allsweet, where they brought in producers. The very most accurate anyone could ever imagine doing is estimating a pig's body weight plus or minus 4%. Most producers were 6%, and a lot of producers were plus or minus 8%. And then when you estimate each pig's body weight then, because you're off a certain amount, you don't truly identify the heaviest pig, because you overestimate one pig and underestimate another pig, and then you're truly not identifying the pigs based on body weight. Then we also got some preliminary data, and we found out there were some pretty large errors. And the only way that some of those errors would exist is that some of the pigs are not being visually evaluated at all. And we use values of 0, 8, 16, and 24%. Now, people might ask, what do you mean some pigs aren't being visually evaluated? Well, let's imagine you have a pen of 125 and you're supposed to identify the 32 heaviest pigs. It's very possible that the people are going in, identify 32 heavy pigs, and say, we're done. And they don't take the time to check and see all the pigs. Now, if you don't see 24% of the pigs, it's about as if every 4th pig is not seen, and it will cause a different amount and different distribution of errors. And those were some of the errors that we were seeing in some of the data. And it means that not every pig is always being visually evaluated on some of the loading crews. These are some of the mean performance levels that we had. If you take all the data at 169 days of age, the average pig was about 259, 179 days, 278, and 193 days of age would have been 303 pounds for the population mean. Notice that the coefficient of variation there is about 11%, which is what we would expect if you have all the pigs spread out over a week's period of time and you have barrows and gilts. Now, the first thing that we did is we added this different types of measurement error and different levels of measurement error. Now, if we did everything perfectly, the first cut should have a mean of 296 pounds with a standard deviation of 14 pounds. If we have different levels of, if we see all the pigs, but we have different levels of body weight estimation error, we're not too bad if we could estimate each pig plus or minus 4%. But as we get here, the pigs tend to get lighter and the standard deviation increase. If we don't see some of the pigs, the same trend, but the standard deviation doesn't increase so much. And if we have both types of errors and are worse in our most inaccurate marketing, then our pigs will be about 7, 8 pounds lighter and have a standard deviation of 19 versus 14. So in the first cut, if we don't accurately sort the pigs, our average market weight will decrease because we're not truly finding the heaviest pigs, and the standard deviation will increase a little bit. What about the second cut? Well, for the second cut, if we look here, the mean doesn't change very much, only a couple pounds. But because this is the second 25% of the pigs, and the normal curve should be higher, but it's narrower band, these pigs should be extremely uniform for the second 25%. But if we have body weight estimation error, the standard deviation gets as high as 19.9, or 3 times greater standard deviation. So the second cut should be uniform, but if we have body weight estimation error, it's a lot more variable. And then the third cut, the last 50%, the standard deviations increase a small amount, from 20 to 27. This is a greater standard deviation because it's the bottom half, the bottom 50%. And then the pigs actually get heavier because some of the heavy pigs that should have been sold the first and second cut ended up in the third cut. But so it's the biggest difference is what happens to that standard deviation of the third cut. I mean standard deviation of the second cut. Now here are some of the differences in the distributions of carcass weight, but if we sold pigs accurately, then we're going to have most of the pigs right around 92 to 96, and we're just going to have less pigs out here on the tails. We'll have a tighter distribution the more accurately we resort the pigs. Now, we also estimated what percent of the pigs were actually sold correctly. And with no body weight estimation error, it would be 100%. If we got to the point of the higher degrees of inaccuracy, we were in the 60s to mid 70s for percentage of pigs sold correctly the first cut. When we did it for the second marketing cut, if we have even 4% body weight estimation error here, we're down to 67%, 54%, 46%, and we get to this less accurate marketing, only about 40% of the pigs that should have been sold the second marketing cut are actually sold correctly. They're not the pigs that should have been sold the second cut. Which means you have a lot of the pigs that should have been sold the first or third cut being sold the second cut. Okay, and this was the third day. The third day is a lot less sensitive because we have a lot of the tail end pigs, and they are light enough that you shouldn't have as much body weight estimation error. And really, this third cut, the errors are made in the first and second cut, and these are the pigs that are remaining. You just empty out the barn on the third cut. So the errors were made the first and second, end up in the third cut when you empty out the barn. Now, we then developed a method to estimate sorting accuracy from carcass weight using reverse modeling. We can use the dressing percentage information from the pork producer and pork processor and predict each pig's body weight the day it was marketed. Using that body weight and date, the body weight of that pig can be estimated for the different marketing times. The pigs then can be sorted based on the predicted body weight and the correct marketing day for each pig established. This assumes that the serial body weights have a correlation of 1, when in fact in all of our data sets the serial correlations amongst body weights taken over a 10 to 14 day period are about 0.985. With reverse modeling, the actual body weights can be predicted, Now, if they would be known if we had auto sort barns or any kind of body weight on the pigs. But with traditional barns, the carcass weights for each pig and the day in which it is marketed, we need to then know. So we need individual carcass weight and when those pigs were sold. If there are multiple marketing days for each cut, then the marketing days need to be grouped into cuts. For example, if it's a large barn and there's 4 days in a row the pigs are marketed, that would be cut number 1. And then the time period between the marketing cuts needs to be at least 5 days, preferably 7 to 8 or 9 days, so that there's time for those additional pigs to grow relative to the variation that we have in dressing percentage. Most producers are going to have 3 to 5 cuts per barn. It works best, this reverse modeling, if they're distinct cuts. Like a first cut, wait 7 to 10 days, second cut, wait 10 days, 12 days, and then empty out the barn. So then we got some data, and they were obtained for 4,000 head barns with 3 marketing cuts, with about 1/3 of the pigs each cut. And the data was analyzed with this reverse modeling procedure. The body weight, the carcass weight, and sort loss was estimated for perfect sorting, if the pigs would have been sold perfectly correctly, and if the pigs would have been sold randomly. We can also do it if the pigs were sold perfectly and then add random variation, although that would take more modeling. But we compared the perfect, the most imperfect, which would be random, like you just let the first pigs out of the pen, and then compared that to the actual data. So for each producer, we kind of summarized here, and then we used the Indiana pork producers grid. I want to point out here with this grid that the break point here is at 236. At 235.5 and under gets no discount, 181 to 235.5. 236 to 240.5 is a mild discount, $3 per hundredweight. But then once you go to 241, it's $11. Now note that this is only really a 5-pound weight range. From 235 to 240.5 is only 5 pounds. So this is a little bit graceful, and then the big discount. And then the discount gets bigger and bigger. But this is a pretty large discount because 2.4 times 11 is about $26. You don't want pigs in that cell. So here's some of the data. Producer A, barn A, about 1/3 of the pigs, not exactly. The mean carcass weights here, 207, 214, and 212. Standard deviations of 14.7, 14.5, and 20. Barn B, fastest growing pigs, 213, 228, 227. Now, remember that the cutoff point was 235.5, 236. So there's still a decent ways between their mean and the cutoff point that they're getting a discount. But the standard deviation here was 19.7. And standard deviation, the last cut, 19.8. And the total overall standard deviation was 19.5 pounds of carcass weight. But definitely the heaviest. These animals were the lightest, 194, 201, and 206. And the average here was 201 with a standard deviation of 16. So we have 201, 211, and 223, with barn B having the heaviest pigs. Okay, this is the data that I want to spend a little time on. This is what would be estimated had you marketed the pigs 100% correctly. The first day, 214 with a standard deviation of 8, 212 with a standard deviation of 4.2, and 205 with a standard deviation of 13.3. This is the actual data. 207. Well, the pigs that were killed were actually 7 pounds lighter than the true upper 33%. Now, I have checked this math, but if you take the middle third, that's right at the mean and 1/6 above and 1/6 below, they should be extremely uniform because that's a maximum height of the normal distribution. And instead of having a standard deviation of 4, the standard deviation is 14.5. And then the last cut is actually heavier than what it should be, and 20.3. And this is the data that you would get if you marketed the pig randomly. And you can see that then this would have been light. This would be the mean that we would expect if the entire population was randomly selected. Barn B is the heaviest barn. 222, 226, 218. If you would have marketed these pigs accurately, they would have been very uniform in the middle and not too bad overall. But they're lighter here by almost 9 pounds. Here the weight is the same, but the standard deviation is 6 times greater than what it should be. 19.7 pounds versus 3.4. And the third day, 19 versus 13.2. If we would have marketed the pigs randomly, they would have been 18.8. Standard deviation 21.5 here, and would have been 26.8. And the third day would have been 23.5. Now, barn C, we have the same trend. The pigs are lighter than they should have been the first cut. The weight was okay for the second cut, but the standard deviation a lot greater, not as great as barn B. And then the third cut, the pigs are actually heavier because pigs that would have been in this cut were now in the third cut, and the standard deviation is greater. Now, what was the sort loss on the Indiana Packers grid? For barn A, if they would have sold the pigs perfectly accurately, the estimated sort loss is 30 cents a pig, or about $1,400. The actual was $1.58 per pig, or $6,191. So you can do the math, but I think it's what, $1.14, $1.22 more per pig. But these pigs are sold moderately light. What about barn B? Barn B, if the pigs would have been sold 100% accurately, they would have had a little average discount here because they were a little on the heavy side, and you got some barn burners that are the fastest growing ones. You would have had 0 sort loss for the second cut and 9 cents for the third cut, and overall you would have had 75 cents per pig sort loss, or $28.79. Their actual data was $1.62, $9.54, and $8.87 for an average sort loss of $6.49 and $24,884. So the sort loss increased substantially for that producer that had the less accurate records, and it was $5.74 a pig, $21,965 more dollars. Farm B was more intermediate. Well, this farm C was actually the lightest pigs, and even though there was a greater standard deviation in the pigs, the sort loss was not increased so much. Now, we started seeing a trend here. Barn C, lightest pigs. A, intermediate, the heaviest, and the barn that pushed the heavier pigs, Their average market weight was 218-ish, if I recall, had the highest sort loss with the actual data. We did do the math for the first and second cut. What percent of the pigs were sold correctly? It was about 65% for barn A, 59% for barn B, and barn C. But for the second cut, 46, 35, and 47. So there's a lot of pigs in this third cut that should have been in the first cut or the third cut. Then overall for the first two cuts, 56, 48, and 52. So there's not a big difference in the accuracy. Barn B is a little bit less accurate. We did look at the magnitude of the errors. I don't want to spend a lot of time with this, but we can estimate, say for barn A, the average pig that was sold but was lighter than the cutoff was about 13 pounds lighter than it should have been, with a pretty good size standard deviation, 10 pounds. And then for barn B, it was like 14 pounds, the pigs that were sold too light, and 11 pounds was the average pig that was sold too heavy. For the second cut, we got as high as 17, minus 9, and 17 standard deviation, and then the mean pigs that were killed that were not killed but should have been killed were 17.1 pounds. So we have some pigs that definitely should have been seen that remained in, ended up in the second cut, and then these pigs were not seen, ended up in the third cut. Well, how does this sorting accuracy affect the distribution of the carcasses? If the pigs would have been sold 100% accurately, the blue bars represents the distribution that you would have in carcass weight. Now, ironically, if you look at these blue bars, this is about like the figure that Julie helped me draw with this normal distribution. If this is about where the cutoff is, you should have a lot of pigs there, a lot of pigs going down, and a tail, because that's the bottom half, and then just a little bit of a tail here because of your first cut. But a high percentage, right from 90 to 100 kilograms, just a very high percentage. This is the distribution that you would have had perfect. If you weighed every pig, what was actual and what would have been if pigs would have been marketed randomly. And with the less accurately you market the pigs, the greater your overall standard deviation. Now, if you randomly marketed your pigs and just opened up the gate, every one of those cuts, you would approach a normal distribution. But if you market accurately, you should have a high percentage here, the weight that you're trying to target, a few slightly less, and then a tail of the fastest gaining pigs that you had to take part of that first cut. And the same for barn C. So accurate sorting would greatly increase the uniformity of the carcass weight of the pigs, and how accurately the pigs are sold for market definitely affects the distribution of the carcass weights that go to the pork processor. So to summarize this first part, what did we learn from the modeling and the case study? Well, with less accurate sorting, the mean body weight, the first cut, is reduced because we don't truly identify the heaviest pigs. And the mean body weight of the last cuts slightly increased because some pigs that were in the first and second cut end up in the third. The standard deviations of all cuts is increased with less accurate sorting, but is especially increased for the third cut. The standard deviation can increase threefold, fourfold, fivefold for the second cut that should be the most uniform pigs, because there's pigs in there that should have been in the first and third cut. And the entire distribution of carcass weights is greatly impacted by the accuracy of sorting. Now, we also got this, kept thinking, and I Francisco and Yichen would keep thinking and thinking. The sort loss is increased, but appears to be based on the 3 barns that it may interact with the mean body weight. The producer that had the heavier body weight got within an average body weight 9 pounds of the cutoff, had the greatest overall sort loss with the actual data. And the case study results indicate that the pigs not sorted very accurately may be really subject to high sort loss if you try to push the pigs to the upper part of the grid of the acceptable BART. So then we went to phase 2. Let's start modeling how this sort loss develops. Let's start seeing if it impacts the optimal market body weights. Now, we assume the same model. 25% of the pigs were marketed the first at 169 days, 25% at 179, and then 50% were marketed at 193 days. If you do that, the average marketing age is 183.5. We just let the pigs go to market a week sooner or a week later, and then had the same percentage marketing errors, the same level of marketing errors, but we just marketed the pigs earlier or later with a broad range of carcass weights, a mean carcass weight of 167 to 240. After we did that and got the points on the curve, we even did some half weeks in between to get a few more points on the curves in the crucial areas. For the economics, we assumed corn was $3.50, distillers grains $158 a ton, and 48% soybean meal at $325 a ton. And I think I will have to admit, we used some Provini spreadsheets that saved us time with all the diets, and saves us some time doing that as far as what was in all the diets. Now, this is the mean sort loss per pig as we increase the mean carcass weight. Now, if you would sell your pigs, and remember that for this Indiana Packers grid, you have to be up there a fair amount to have the sort loss. The first cut is 236 pounds. So obviously, if we get close to the where the discount starts, then we're going to have these two are going to converge together. But if you would sell your pigs right in the middle of the processor's grid, you could sort the pigs inaccurately, and you still wouldn't have much sort loss. Okay? You don't have to sort the pigs accurately if you're in the middle of the processor's acceptable body weight range. But the higher you go, if you sorted the pigs accurately, you can go up to 220, 223, and you still will have very little mean sort loss per pig. And your mean can be 220 pounds and still not have much sort loss. But the less accurately you sort the pigs, the sort loss comes faster. And the amount of extra sort loss that you're going to have by inaccurate sorting is dependent upon what your average weight of your pigs is. The more you push the upper limit and get your pigs around this 118 to 220, 223 pound average on this marketing grid, you're going to be very sensitive to the level of sorting accuracy. The reason for this, if you push yourself to the upper part of the processor's grid and you're not sorting your pigs accurately, then some of the heavy pigs remain, and the next 10 days after, they will be too heavy, and then you'll sell those pigs with a discount. And it's enough such that some of them are ending up 242, 243, and then you're being discounted to $11 per hundredweight. Now, here we show different combinations of sorting accuracy. 0 and 8%, you see all the pigs but have 8% accuracy. You miss 24%, and then you combine the two together. Now, for farm B, with a mean weight around here, the difference was $5.76. If we take this point right here, it's $5.60. We reproduce the results. Because if this level of accuracy was, when you sell your pigs at that weight, the extra sort loss you're going to get is about $5.50 a pig. This is how much the daily sort loss, mean daily sort loss, increases. So it's how much additional sort loss you're going to get each day with the different levels of sorting accuracy. Now, what this means as you start increasing your mean market weights, then the amount of extra sort loss you're going to get per pig increases, and this is going to take away from your extra income of feeding that pig, because it's going to be the increase in sort loss. Now, I'll show you in the next figure, but with the prices that we had, some of your average income might be 80 cents per pig per day, and your average cost would be in that 70% at the end. But so when you start increasing your amount of sort loss here, 20 cents a pig per day, 30 cents per pig per day, and 40 cents per pig per day, you're just not going to go in that area if you can't accurately sort the pigs. This is the daily increase in sort loss. We had the 4 levels of sorting accuracy again, and you get different results depending upon what type of errors you have. And this is with the perfect sorting accuracy. Now, we use 2 market prices for this modeling, 65 cents or 75 cents per pound of carcass weight. Your daily cost, as I said, is about 79 cents a day. It slightly increases because feed intake slightly increases, but not much. Now, the feed efficiency goes up, yes. The percent lean goes down a little, yes. But the daily cost doesn't change much if feed intake doesn't increase. And generally, if you have pigs that stay efficient, to 290, 300 pounds, they can't have a sudden increase in feed efficiency. And most of you know that if you're trying to model what's your maximum profit per head, it's where marginal cost equals marginal return. And this is without any sort loss at all. No sort loss at all. With the 65 cent, we go to 235. And if we had no sort loss at all with 75 cent pigs, we'd actually go way up here. Now that's with no sort loss at all. But then we have to add the sort loss on top. When we add the sort loss on top, our pigs are making, our daily income's more than $1 a day. It starts to decline, and then our optimal market weight here is about 217 or 218 pounds. If we're a little bit less accurate, it goes down to 209. A little bit less accurate, 207. And we're 8% body weight estimation error, we go down to 206 pounds carcass weight. So that's a 12-pound difference in carcass weight, or about 14, 15 pounds decrease in the optimal body weight because of the inaccurate sorting, where the marginal returns equals marginal cost. And this shows you the daily marginal returns, and here's the daily cost, and that's why we get the answers we do. This is the profit per pig with the higher price, and this is pretty flat here. From 217 to 221 pounds, it only changes about 7 or 8 cents. So it's flat. And this is between 217 to 219. And yes, it drops, I think, 6 cents, 6 cents a pound if you go to 220. Flat. This is the second, if you could estimate pigs, plus or minus 4%. Then plus or minus 6%. No, this is 8, this is 24% unseen, and then this is the least accurate. And as we get less accurate, the curve gets to be more curved. There is more of a definite peak, and we're down to 206 pounds optimal. We do profit per head per day, very flat, decreases and decreases the optimal weight, decreases in optimal weight. Now, one thing we did look at, what if you assumed that you model assuming there is perfect marketing, and then you tell the producers to go with this heavier market weight, but the pigs are not sorted accurately, then the extra loss can be about $24,000, $25,000 per barn per year. The producers that sort the pigs less accurately need to decrease their optimal market weight, because otherwise the pigs that they don't market correctly will be sold at a discount later on. So with the IPC grid at carcass weights below 201 pounds and really around 205 pounds mean carcass weight, impact of any of the 3 levels of accurate sorting had very little impact. If you sell pigs right in the middle of the acceptable producer's range and you do 3 cuts, you're not going to have much increase in sort loss. As the average carcass weight increases with increased marketing age, the impact of inaccurate sorting increases and is maximized at mean carcass weights of 214 to 229 pounds carcass weight. And this is what hit herd B. He had heavier pigs, not so accurate sorting, and the extra sort loss was $5.74 per pig. Now, the optimal carcass weights with accurate sorting is 215 to 219 pounds, are greater than the average carcass weights with less accurate sorting, only 206 to 207 pounds carcass weight. The profitability for less accurate sorting is more sensitive to achieving the optimal market weight than with more accurate sorting. There's a flatter top to the response surface with accurate sorting than inaccurate sorting. Now, we also got some comments, well, you need to look at some different marketing grids. We looked at the Tyson grid. I'll just mention this a little bit. That here we have a pretty broad acceptable rate range, and then we have a very mild discount, and this goes for 6 pounds. Another mild discount, and this goes for another 7 pounds, and then we start getting greater discounts here. But it's a different discount method. Now, this would be the profit per pig for an individual pig with the highest 75 cents per pig carcass weight. And if you do that with lean genetics, you will actually sell pigs very close to the top of the Packers grid with this price, right at 217 to 218 pounds, with an average profit about $26.46. And as you get, as you start going here on an individual pig basis, you only lose a couple dollars and a couple more dollars, and then by the time you make the third sell from 234 to 240, then you're losing about $8 a pig. So if the market price is high, you'll actually sell pigs very close to the top here, because this rate that it goes up is almost the same rate as it's going down. Now, if the market price is lower, then this slope at 65 cents is almost halved. And then you would decrease your optimal market weight. But this is a different system than Indiana Pack. So generally, you're not so sensitive to inaccurate sorting with Tyson's, but it does depend on the market price. But if the market price is high relative to feed costs, you actually, if you could accurately sort on an individual pig basis, would be right here. But we still do see that when accurate sorting, you are going to have greater sort loss earlier. Then we looked at the optimal market weight. It was 218. So you were right at the top of the Packer's grid with lean genetics. With this 75 cents, with 65 cents it would be reduced. And your optimal weight was decreased only about 3 pounds. When the market rate is lower, then it's going to have a greater effect, but not as much ever as the Indiana Packer's grid. So to summarize then, as the accuracy of sorting decreases, the optimal market weights decrease. To optimize the target market weights and marketing strategy, one must take into account the level of sorting accuracy. The level of sorting accuracy can be estimated from carcass weight data from pork processing plants if we have the individual carcass weight data, and the marketing days can be sorted into marketing cuts. We essentially can give a report card for the people sorting the pigs. How good a job did you do? And the less accurate the sorting, the greater the variation in carcass weight as subsequent cut weights. The number one source of variation for cut weights for hams and loins and shoulders is the variation in carcass weight. And less accurate sorting can have a great impact on the standard deviation of the pigs going to the pork processor. In the future, the impact of marketing grids and sorting accuracy and distribution of pigs needs to be further evaluated. Ultimately, pork processors need to determine the optimal distribution of carcasses in terms of carcass weight, cut weights, or any other kind of cut dimensions like thickness of belly that will optimize the profitability of their plant. In other words, there is an optimal distribution of carcasses given the supply and demand curves for different weights of the cuts that will maximize their plant profitability. It will be very hard to achieve that optimal distribution or even control it very well if we have less accurate sorting at marketing, because we'll always have a lot of variation. We need to develop grids that encourage the optimal distribution of primal and subprimal cut weights, including belly thickness and product weights. And stochastic models are required that will reproduce the variation of pigs within the population. I just want to thank, maybe I'm the ringleader of this group, but we had a lot of work by a lot of students from Cheng to Francisco Cabezon. Nathan Thompson was added for the ag economics. My grad student Mark Cheng helped out with some of the economic analysis and just recently completed some of the work with the Tyson grids. Yichen was funded by a share grant from the National Pork Producers. And then we also have some funding for an undergraduate who's going to do some evaluation of what additional work from an extension side needs to be done in this area and what additional educational efforts we need from this marketing modeling perspective. I guess my final comment is a quote I just found. The 6 most expensive words in the business are, "We've always done it that way," by Jess Daly. I guess, any questions?
The reverse modeling word. Okay. Dr. Schinckel, with your reverse modeling work, You talked about, a lot of your work was done doing 25% as a first cut, 25% as a second cut, 50% as a third cut. I guess, can you allude to, some of the work that you did to find out that was optimal?
Well, we've done previous work in the early 2000s when we were asked to model the optimal use of rotopamine, and we knew with lean genetics we'd be pushing the upper part of the grid so that we targeted the same mean carcass weights with those 25%, 25%, and 50%. And all of our modeling data we did with rotopamine, if we want to maximize the daily returns for the barn, when we hit the bottom 50%, we emptied out the entire barn. So in the long term, the optimal was to take out the upper 25, 25, and approximately when we got down to the bottom 50, we'd empty out the barn. We would never allow a barn to go less than 50% because then we would
Pig days would be short.
pig days would. Now, in real life, you can have a long-term strategic plan, and then you have a short-term, your pigs are growing faster than expected, they're growing slower than you expected, and you either have a situation that the barn cannot be refilled, in which case you would take all your pigs for profit per pig, but there are other times where you have to empty the barn and the next group is coming, and in that case, that will control your marketing, and then the value of average daily gain is substantial in that case, where if your schedule is loose, the advantage of average daily gain is reduced. So in reality, you've almost got to do the models situation by situation.
And you still need the 5 to 7 days at a minimum in between each cut then for the compensatory gain.
Yeah, and it's not just for compensatory gain, it's that if you sold pigs every other day, you don't get a distinct cut. You don't get a distinct, yes, that was an error or not an error, relative to our variation in dressing percentage, which is plus or minus 2%. If you sold pigs, a few pigs every other day, I can't tell you for sure that that pig should have been killed that day and that pig should have been killed that day, because the variation in dressing percentage of 2% is as great as the little differences that you would get from every other day. So when I penciled it out by hand, we need at least 5 days between the marketing cuts. And we do have some people who are, when they get to the middle, are making a lot of narrow marketing cuts. It's hard for me to define what is a distinct marketing cut.
So we got a question from the web, which is, in your opinion, does a sorting system like a sort all pay for itself?
If it can be done easily and your pigs are efficient to go to the upper part of the packer's grid, then you can more carefully go to the upper part of the packer's grid. So I have not done all the economics for how much labor and what expense that is going to be, but for some of the examples that we ran, it was $5.50 per pig, $5.74 a pig. If you can do it for less than that and your pigs are feed efficient and the market price is high and you want to push the very upper limit of the packer's grid, it's all a question of whether you can do it for less than $4 or $5 a pig, because that's probably going to be your return if you want to push the upper part of the grid.
Any other questions? If not, I guess for those of us in the room here, we'll thank Dr. Schinckel for that excellent presentation.
It took me longer to go through it than I expected.